book, but this is important for your listeners to understand. The way she puts it, Phyllis, is the Financial Times recently had a headline that the Chinese were going to overtake the U.S. as the world's leading economic power this year. See, so originally it was supposed to be 2019, but they've moved it up. They moved the timetable up, so it's now going to be this year. And that's important because we have been the world's leading economic power, according to the Financial Times, since we passed England in 1872. That's a long time. That's almost 150 years. We've been the leading world's financial economic power. But this year, the Chinese are supposed to overtake us. So what are they doing with it? And we know this. They're putting a lot of it into their defense budget, right, to build themselves up so that we then won't challenge them. It's not a question of will they challenge us. We won't challenge them strategically in their own field. And we did it, under the guise of free trade. Well, Bill Gertz, who Dr. Stan's familiar with, and his 9/11 article about Project Bojinka months before 9/11, Bill Gertz recently had a report about the 2014 U.S. Quadrennial Defense Review. And it's, a long document, about 88 pages. And if you look on page 80 of that, it's from the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Martin Dempsey. And he said in this report that the risk of a conflict in Asia is, quote, dangerously increasing, right? And the worst part is, he said that the way he put it was, the prediction, he said that our coming conflict with China, there's increasing possibility of a conflict with China, will probably be waged on United States territory, because the distance and the Pacific Ocean will no longer protect us against China's new weapons. So what will happen is, they will have an incident, let's say, against Taiwan. Taiwan will be set up. They'll whack us. And if we say, well, we have to go in and defend Taiwan, all of a sudden Obama or somebody say, well, wait a minute, we built them up so much, and Bill Clinton's buddy gave them the technology for their ICBMs to reach us. Thank you, Bill Clinton, and you're a friend. So that now, when he calculates whether we're going to act against China in that area, he has to take into consideration that their new capabilities in China can now reach us, all the way across the Pacific and blow out Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and then, the longer we let them work, they'll blow up Chicago, and they can have their submarines sitting off our coast anyway. And I think that's what one of those incidents was. Remember when they said they saw this rocket go up the ship off of our west coast? And golly, I wonder where that rocket came from. But they never said, right? They had an investigation, but they never said what that thing in the sky was. And it could have been a Chinese, a Chinese submarine just launching a sort of missile pointed out toward the Pacific, right? You pointed out toward the Pacific instead of in. But the message is clear. If we can launch a missile from a submarine going up, and all the people on your west coast see this missile going up in the air toward out the Pacific, all we have to do is aim it inland, and there goes Los Angeles. It's just like a shot across our bow to warn us. And so what happens is, you can't just do this stuff. I mean, you can't just launch missiles. What you have to do is control what's called the cyber domain, the technological capabilities, because we're sitting around real cocky like saying, well, you just let them try and launch that ICBM for a wheel. Our satellites will pick that up and we'll intercept. Oh, really? Yeah. Well, look what they're doing in terms of our patents. Our courts have already, the administration has already said 5 Chinese have been charged with crimes of espionage and, swiping our patents and copyrights and trade secrets and so on. Well, just think about that applied to military weapons. Think about a cyber attack against our military capabilities. And you're saying, well, we've got really hotshot technology, computer wizards. Oh, yeah? Really? Well, guess what? I've been saying for many, many years about how the education system of China, remember, in my article, look it up, called Looming Economic Disaster, News Reviews column I had years ago, Looming Economic Disaster, I show how 50 million Chinese students in school and 50 million students in India, but 50 million in China, are taking in high school 4 years of algebra, 4 years of geometry, 4 years of trigonometry, 4 years of calculus, and statistics thrown in. in, and it's all integrated. While we're doing what? We're going to Common Core, which doesn't even include trigonometry and calculus. It's only 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, and it integrates algebra and functions and geometry, but not, trig and calculus. So if you got 50 million Chinese students being that far advanced over us, guess who in a few years is going to be in control of the cyber domain? It's not going to be us. It's going to be them, or they, as you would correctly say it. But the point is, they're going to win that too. Not just free trade, not just building up their military in general, their arsenal, but they're going to have the smarts to smother us and put us down if we try to respond to them militarily. And we'll pick up after the break.
Okay, fine. Of course, our guest is Dr. Dennis Cuddy, and he paints a rather grim future, but there is a grim future. We'll be back in just a moment. Well, Dennis, you've got 3 minutes to wrap up the program, and then we'll let you go.
Okay, well, just picking back up that and trying to finish it, what you have is a strategic type of situation. There was a great Chinese strategist years ago called Tai Kung, and what he did is he said that you want to convince your enemy that you pose no threat, and thereby lull him into complacency. It's sort of like Dmitry Manuelsky said for the Soviets. And so what you had was some years ago, Hillary Clinton, when she was Secretary of State, she said this back in November of 2011, that the centerpiece of the new Obama foreign and defense policy would be a pivot. We were going to start looking to the east because, there's the threat coming from China, and Asia's the threat. Well, this year, Assistant Secretary of Defense Katrina McFarland, as Phyllis Schlafly reports, says, let the cat out of the bag, saying, quote, the pivot is being looked at again because, candidly, it cannot happen. We can't do it. And she said, why? There simply isn't enough money for it. See? Money. Well, quickly, she was told to clarify his statement, but really, she was telling the truth. And the Soviet Union did the same thing, some years ago when, the Kremlin said, we will bury you, and those speeches, and Khrushchev pounding his shoe on the desk at the UN and so forth and so on. So what you have is Admiral Samuel Locklear is an admiral who President Obama appointed to head the Pacific, U.S. Pacific Command. Well, earlier this year in January, he declared that, quote, our historic dominance is diminishing. Let me say it again, our historic dominance is diminishing, quote, end quote. Now, that's him. That's the Admiral Samuel Locklear, who's heading the Pacific Command. And so how does this happen? Well, it happened with this free trade. And the people providing this free trade knew what they were doing when they started it. And so right now, what are they trying to do? The Trans-Pacific Partnership. Yeah, well, how's that going to work out? Well, the last such deal that we had was called the U.S.-Korea Free Trade Agreement, KORUS, K-O-R-U-S. And how did that work out? Well, that cost us another 60,000 American jobs while increasing jobs in South Korea. That's what they're doing. They're redistributing the world through redistributing jobs and investments and so forth, and that's how they will fulfill the Earth Charter, which said redistribute wealth within countries and among nations, and that was provided to us by Nelson Rockefeller's son, Stephen Rockefeller, who wrote it for Gorbachev and Maurice Strong, who both said this is going to be like a new 10 Commandments. It's like a religion to them. It's like a religion. And so that's what we're facing, and I guess time's about up.
Time's about up. Our guest has been Dr. Dennis Cuddy. Thank you so much for being with us, Dennis, and we'll look forward to having you with us again next week as we talk about similar problems.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, ladies and gentlemen,